What does it mean to be spiritually awakened? Is it an experience, a state of being, or something else entirely? Let's see what we are waking up to. We are awakened by belief, and I emphasize belief, that is, by something we believe we are. We believe that we are a character who wanders through this world and does various things and has various experiences. It is a belief because a belief is a thought in our mind. The character we think we are can only be found in our thoughts. If we look around, we will not find this character because this character exists only as a fantasy in our mind. Okay, yes, there is a body running around immersed in the activity of life, but so are the animals and the trees. Trees grow, but they do not believe that they exist as separate characters in the theater of life. This is only unique to humans because we exist and know we exist. Yet somehow, evolution allowed for the creation of a thinking mind, and with it the illusion of a distinct character or self. This self exists only in our mind and nowhere else, and was formed in our mind, probably and solely for survival purposes. We call it waking up because it's like waking up from a dream. In the dream, our real self, our consciousness, watches various characters doing various things in a certain place in the dream. The reason we often believe the dream is reality is that we identify with one of the characters in the dream and begin to believe the dream is real. I want to emphasize that we follow the dream with our awareness as consciousness. All the characters within the dream do not know that they are part of the dream. Only consciously do we experience and see the dream. We see our mind dreaming the dream. The body sleeps. Everything in the dream is a creation of the mind. The trees, the roads, the characters in the dream exist only in our dream, entirely created by our mind. The character we identify with in the dream is only a fictional character of our mind. In fact, if you decide to remember your dreams, you will notice that the character you identify with in the dream may not be the character you think you are in real life. In the dream, you may identify with any character, even characters very different from the character you think you are in life while you are awake. Similarly, in waking life, you are believed to be a certain character. You believe that you as that character have certain likes and dislikes, beliefs, ideas, memories, and a history of who that character is. But like the dream, whether your story is true, whether your story happened or not, it's all together with your character story in your mind. So you have made the fatal mistake of identifying with this fictional character. And just like in the dream, you begin to believe that this fictional character is you, and that the character is real, when in reality, the character and his story are only inside in your mind. Then you make the other fatal mistake of following that character's insanity in their thoughts, feelings, goals, and interpretations of what's going on in your life, which in most cases leads your fictional character to your ultimate destruction. This character, being fictional and a creation of society and instincts, functions entirely like a computer program. All his actions, thoughts, and reactions are automatic. Awakening is not about becoming something other than what we already are, but about recognizing the truth of who we have always been after seeing through the illusion of the imaginary character in our mind. As your true self, your consciousness, you are aware of the character in your mind as thoughts and imaginations, just as when you sleep and watch the dream character. Because you believe in this imaginary character, you start daydreaming with that imaginary character. And you also believe that what the character believes is real. Just like in the dream, you believe that the character is real by having real experience. But in reality, everything is only inside your own mind. Of course, you feel all his pain and pleasure. But when the dreamers awaken, they realize that all the characters were expressions of their own consciousness, creations of their own minds. The boundaries between the characters dissolve, revealing their underlying unity within the dreamer's consciousness. Likewise, all forms are expressions of our one consciousness, the one reality that lies beneath thought and pervades all things. The appearance of multiple forms is a kind of illusion, a play of the divine that allows for the rich diversity and intercommunication of forms. To understand awakening, we must first understand the ego. The ego is the sense of self that most of us have. It is a separate entity with its own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. It is the I we refer to when we talk about ourselves. But is this I that we have convinced ourselves to be real? Is it a fixed, permanent entity, or is it something else? If we investigate carefully, we find that the ego is a mental construct, a product of thought and preparation. It is a bundle of memories, beliefs, and habits with which we have identified. The ego is not an entity in itself, but an activity of the mind. It is the constant stream of thoughts that say, I am this, or I am that. It is the constant narrative that spins in our mind about ourselves, the story of who we are and what we need to be fulfilled. When we identify with the ego, we suffer because the ego is in a constant state of resistance to the experiences it is having. That is, it constantly resists experiencing life as life really is because the ego has its own agenda and experiences life through its own filters. Thus, the ego never feels complete. Everything is missing because the ego has no solid existence. It is just imagination and thought. The selfish mind is always in a state of resistance because it wants reality to be different from what it is. It clings to the idea of a separate self that needs to be protected and strengthened. When life inevitably fails to live up to its desires and expectations, the ego reacts with judgment, fear, anger, and despair. The problem with the ego is that it is inherently unstable and insecure. Because it is a mental construct made up of thoughts, beliefs, and memories, it has no fixed existence. It is always changing and changing, never fully satisfied or never feeling complete. This is why the ego always clings to experiences, places, people, and possessions. He tries to find security in the outside world, in possessions, relationships, and experiences. He believes that if he can just acquire enough things, friends, houses, and experiences, have enough possessions or achieve enough achievements, then he will finally be happy and fulfilled. But whatever the ego does to find satisfaction is just a futile effort. No matter how much the ego accumulates things, relationships, and experiences, it can never fill the void at its core. The sense of lack and inadequacy persists and remains within him because the ego is inherent in the very structure of the separate and ideal self, which the ego thinks it is, but the ego is only in the mind as a fantasy. It is a kind of delusion. No matter how successful or impressive the ego is, it can never escape its fundamental unreality. It's still just a construct, a story we tell ourselves about who we are. This is a very common situation in our society. Many people identify deeply with their ego and spend their lives trying to prove its reality and importance. They may achieve great things, accumulate wealth and fame, and be honored by society for their achievements. When we identify with the ego, we are always operating from a place of lack and inadequacy. We believe that we have to prove ourselves, to be special or important, to be worthy or lovable. This is why the ego is always trying and competing, always trying to stand out from the crowd. But no matter how much the ego achieves, it can never find lasting satisfaction or peace. There is always more to gain, always a new level of success to reach. Even at the height of success, there is the constant fear of losing it all, being outdone, or being forgotten. The truth is that no external validation can give the separate ego the stable existence it craves. Its very nature is uncertainty. This is the tragedy of the ego game. It's a game that can never be won because it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of who we are. We are not the ego, and no egoic achievement can change that fact. The ego is also constantly defending itself, trying to prove its existence. He compares himself to others, tries to be special or important, and is quick to take offense or feel threatened. All of this is an attempt to prop up his own sense of reality. Awakening is the investigation of this illusion of the separate self. It is the immediate recognition that the ego, as a separate entity, does not actually exist. What we are, in fact, is the pure awareness of our consciousness in which the ego appears and disappears. This awareness is not a thing or an object. It is not something we can understand or define. It is the very ground of existence, the ineffable presence behind all experience. It is what we are before we think it exists. Awakening to this truth is not an experience in the conventional sense. Awakening is not something that happens to the ego because the ego is an illusion. That is, there is no one who awakens when we awaken. Awakening is the realization of our true nature, which is what we have always been, but thought to be our ego. Awakening is shifting our understanding of who we are from the ego illusion to the awareness of our consciousness. But awakening is not the end of the spiritual quest. It is the beginning of a new way of being in the world. The persistence of the ego is continuous, and the habit of identification with it can happen again and again. That is why constant practice and vigilance is required. The paradox is that even when we awaken and recognize our true nature, the appearance of the ego can continue. We may still experience thoughts, feelings, and all the other phenomena of human experience, but we no longer identify with and consider the ego, its thoughts, and its feelings to be who we really are. So, awakening is a kind of double vision. On one level, we continue to engage with the world as the ego, that is, as individuals in relation to others, pursuing our goals and interests. But on another level, we never forget our true nature as the awareness of our consciousness that encompasses everything we experience in life. The paradox of awakening is that it is not about some mystical experience, which it could be, but about the simple recognition of who we have always been. It is a recognition of the illusion of the ego as a separate self, an awareness of our true nature as the pure awareness of our consciousness. This realization is not an experience, but a profound shift in our understanding of who we are. It is as if we enter a portal that finds us in a new way of being, a life lived in terms of our own being. Thus, we know the true freedom and joy of a life lived in alignment with the deepest truth of what is. We begin to appreciate the fleeting nature of flowers, trees, animals, and people. Deep within us lies the truth of our being, the true self, calling us to celebrate the beauty of life. It invites us to celebrate the beauty of every moment because every moment is like a beautiful rose. Each moment, we drink deeply from the nectar of the rose and let it go with a full and grateful heart. In this way, we know the true freedom and joy of celebrating the rose of each moment, drinking its nectar and letting it go with a heart full of gratitude. In this awakened life, we dance the dance of existence, fully committed yet always free. We play our part in the great drama, but we know it is a game of consciousness. We embrace the paradox of being both the individual and the infinite, the form and the formless, the wave and the ocean. This is what is meant by awakening. It means discovering the peace, freedom, and wholeness that is our true nature. It is an invitation to return to ourselves, to rest in the beauty and mystery of our being. Let us awaken to this truth to live by it with grace, courage, and compassion. Because after all, awakening is not only about ourselves. It is about recognizing our inherent oneness with all life and living from that point of love and understanding. created by Elias Stasinos. Thank you for following me on this spiritual quest. Be well.